and you're in Philadelphia, they probably got 10 plays for Jalen in the RPO, and they're going to go like this. I'm running here. I'm going to kick your ass, and you can't stop us. That's why it's a low turnover type of offensive approach. It's a winning approach because protecting the football in these games is the most essential thing you can have. Okay? This is not a complex offense in Philly. That thing in Kansas City is. Let's get to our friend, man. Classroom is just about ready to start here with Seth Joyner. Seth, I appreciate it here, man. I thank you so much. This is a great time of the year here. Seth, are you concerned going into this game Saturday night against this Giants team that this team hasn't played their best ball the last month of the season?
I'm here.
Okay, hey, Seth, are you concerned that this team hasn't played their best ball the last month of the season going into the Saturday night game?
No, listen, you never know. I think that everybody thought that, Dallas wouldn't fare well last week, given how they played, and they went down to Tampa Bay and looked darn near unbeatable. But then again, you can't really tell whether that was how bad Tampa really is or whether Dallas is, really playing that well. It's interesting what you said about Kansas City as well. I was listening. I think that what Kansas City does is, Andy is a master at using your inefficiencies against you, if you will. I don't think that what he does is overly complicated or overly genius. I just think that, they look at film and they look at guys and they see where there's technique flaws and where there's fundamental flaws and where there's undiscipline in a defense. And I think they game plan to take advantage of those things because they know that players aren't disciplined like they were, back in the day when I played. It's simple because your eyes are a big part of, the game. So all of that ring around the rosy and motion and, jet motion and, all of this stuff all over the place is designed to make your eyes look somewhere where it shouldn't be looking. It's almost like, I got my right hand behind my back. Here's my left hand. Look at what my left hand. Don't pay attention to what my right hand is doing. And when teams are undisciplined, they're going to get beat like that. Now, that doesn't mean that Patrick Mahomes and the weapons that he has, they aren't effective in what they do. But I think, most teams get beat more because of undisciplined eyes and undisciplined key reading and undisciplined in, as far as the integrity of their defense is concerned, than anything else.
Seth, I'm going to bring a comment up that Buddy Ryan made to Jerome and I when he came down in '86. He was telling us because he was watching game film with us and Jimmy and Butch Davis and all them guys. And he looked at both of us and went just like this. Don't ever watch the ball. Watch your technique because it'll take you to the ball. He goes, when you start watching the ball, and to your point, Seth, I'm down with Jimmy and Belichick's down there, and I asked him how he approached and how he attacked teams. He goes, I find the guy that has the least understanding of the defensive scheme or the offensive scheme, and we go after that particular guy. That's why they were so difficult for years. So to your point, that's what you do. How would you attack this Giant team then, in your opinion, if you're Philadelphia, on what you've seen so far? Except this looks like a completely different Giant team than what we saw in Week 14.
Well, again, I ask the question, is it a different team or was it the bland Minnesota Viking defense? Because I don't think that Minnesota's defense is really all that good. Ed Donatello runs a real basic defense. They want to be in zone, 85% of the time, although they did get in some man situations more than I'm sure the Giants expected. But it was a kind of a little bit of a departure from who they really are, is what I'm trying to say. They want to be in zone. They want to sit in their zone. But Daniel Jones came out. They had, Kafka and Dayball had a great plan for him. He was getting the ball out of his hands. He was decisive where to go with the ball because he was getting pre-snap reads. When you see these cornerbacks line up 8-9 yards off the ball, they're trying to run cover 3 off of that. Teams are just going to raise up and throw it out there and take the 5 or 6 yards and keep the chains moving. That's what Daniel Jones did. And then they were undisciplined in how they was, rushing the passer, and they let him sneak out and run for almost 70 yards in the first half alone. It just, if my number one objective, and any defense's number one objective, is to stop the opposing team from running the ball and make them one-dimensional. Saquon Barkley, while he didn't have a ton of yards, it wasn't, his numbers weren't overly impressive. I think he had like 9 carries for like 54 yards,
right there,
and 2 touchdowns. One really big run. Other than that, but he was playing like a man possessed. In the passing game, he had 5 catches for another 50+ yards. So that's the guy, in my opinion, you got to get him under control. The Eagles have got to get him under control. And I don't care if you have to load the box, you load the box, but you can't allow Saquon Barkley to get off, because if he gets off and they start running play action, boots, and all that kind of stuff, short rolls with Daniel Jones and his ability to run out of the pocket, then you got problems. I want to shut down the run. I want my ends to be disciplined. I want my tackles to be disciplined in their rush lanes, balanced. We want to get there, but we don't want to get there at the expense of letting him out the pocket. We want Daniel Jones to operate and win the game and make tough decisions from the pocket.
Seth, why am I concerned about the coaching staff more than I am about the players on Saturday night? When I hear a guy like Jonathan Gannon today going like this, we're really not going to do anything different than what we've been doing all year. And again, I'm not expecting him to give the game plan away at a press conference, but they're not going to do anything different than what they have, because that's his DNA. His DNA is soft coverages, having a zone. And when you got linebackers that struggle on what you're saying, covering backs out of the backfield and tight ends, I'll tell you something that's been exposed about the Eagle. Maybe you disagree. The Eagle linebackers, they struggle covering tight ends and backs out of the backfield. And if you play a soft zone, Seth, I don't know how there's not a hole in the middle of that if you establish a running game.
Well, listen, I've said it all along that, there's issue with these linebackers. I thought Kazir White would be a much better coverage linebacker than he's been. Smart teams, and I expect for this offensive coordinator and this head coach to take advantage of the middle of the field against these 2 linebackers. TJ Edwards, I think, has been great in the run game. And at times he's been good, in the passing game. But more times than not, they've taken advantage of him. When you go 3-by-1 and TJ is the Mike backer, and they begin to take the tight end and swap the tight end with the Z receiver, they've now created a mismatch, whether you're in zone or whether you're in man. And that middle linebacker has to play that number 3 wide receiver in zone concepts, and he just can't stand up, to that responsibility. So then what do? They go to dime, and they take Kazir White out, and they just really, they go single high. They put TJ Edwards as a hole player, and now you got DBs all over the place. Well, from an offensive coordinator, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, well, we got the numbers that we want. Let's run the ball in this situation, specifically if it's a 3rd and short situation, you want to go dime. Really, the only time that this team can play dime is in 3rd and long situations. But, for Jonathan Gannon to say he's not going to do anything different, he's almost really giving away his game plan. Because if you're going to do the same thing and you've got a chance to see this same defense twice, the 3rd time, offensively, you're going to make some adjustments that's going to allow you to have some successes. He's got to have a couple of different wrinkles in. Those cornerbacks cannot play cover 3 from 7 to 8 yards off. They've got to get up and bail and play cover 3 from a bail technique. They've got to play man from off, and then come up as the play clock is running down. You got to do some different things to confuse and get Daniel Jones to think, while he's out there, rather than him making pre-snap reads and knowing what he wants to do and where he wants to go with the ball before he even asks the center for it.
Boy, Seth, that's right on, because like you said, if you're playing back and you're not playing press coverage, And all of a sudden, you're stressing your edges out so much, because I thought that was one of the determining factors on why Jones was so successful, was because he threatened the edges and they couldn't keep him in contain. That was a new element added. They almost basically took a page out of the Philadelphia Eagles page and said, well, Daniel Jones is a pretty good athlete. Let's see if he could stress the edges. And if you're not pressing, they're going to run them down the field, right? Your end's got to keep that guy boxed in. That could be the key to this ball game here.
Well, it's going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be a huge part in this game. Listen, we always knew that Daniel Jones could run the football. They just never put him in a position where, he's needed to run it. But when you get into the playoffs, you pull out all the stops. You do everything that you can to win that game. And you pool whatever resources you have at your disposal to be successful. Why would you hold Daniel Jones in make him a pocket passer when he has those capabilities? Especially playing against Minnesota, who is a zone team who all of a sudden decided that they wanted to play a little more man coverage. Well, you play right into the hands of Daniel Jones because your defensive ends and your tackles were undisciplined in their rush lanes, and when they were undisciplined, he got outside the pocket, and against man coverage, he's going to get 10 to 15 yards before the defense can react to him, because most of the guys, once he breaks contain, are running with wide receivers down the field with their backs to the quarterback, So if you're going to play man coverage, then you got to temper your pass rush. You can go all out when you got a zone behind it. Is your defensive line in tune with the coverage enough to understand the difference between the two, or are the communicators on your defense smart enough to let those guys know, hey, we got man coverage here? Be a little more disciplined. Hey, we got zone coverage here. You guys can, you got a little more latitude to just go.
Couple last questions here for you, Seth. I mean, Seth, do you agree that we're going to know immediately how much the game plan and the playbook is opened on how they manage Jalen Hurts and whether or not his health is where it needs to be? Now, you and I will look at it like this. Everybody's healthy right now, man. I don't give a crap what it is. It's playoffs. You got to get out there and play. But do you manage the fact that he's missed a couple games because of that shoulder injury? Do you run him in the RPOs? Do you not run him in the RPOs? Do you think we're going to know right away whether or not really the extent of his injury right away? Because if he's not stressing the edges, Seth, he's a unique player like Lamar. He needs that part of his arsenal, I think, to win ball games.
No, listen, I think that, he is the system, and what he does opens up everything for everyone else. Him being a threat to run the ball helps the running game from the running backs. Him being a threat to run the football opens up the passing lanes for RPOs. Him with the ability to run the football when they run read option opens up everything, okay? So I think this offense is a lot more complex, than people think it is, but you have to have Jalen Hurts at his fullest in order for it to actually work. See, because there's how many quarterbacks in the NFL can run this system? Maybe 1, 2 at the most, okay? So it's complex because every single time that you put the ball out there, you're reading 2 or 3 things, and one bad read, could put you in a second long or third long situation. What Jalen's been masterful at all year is making the right reads and the right decisions at the right times. He very rarely makes a mistake on what he's supposed to be doing with the football. I think that as you go into this game, you pull out all the stops. This isn't like week 16, week 17, where you got another week to come back and figure it out. The finality of the playoffs means that you pull out all the stops to get done what you have to get done to move on to the next round. Now, you want Jalen to be smart. You don't want to be silly and be out there, lowering your throwing shoulder trying to run over defensive backs or linebackers. But you want him to run the offense the way the offense has been designed and how he's been running the offense before he got injured. and you have to throw caution to the wind. You can't protect him in a game like this. The only way you can protect him is that you get out, you get a huge lead that's insurmountable, and you take him out at halftime. That's the only way you're going to protect him on Saturday night. Other than that, whatever's in the playbook, everything is up, everything's alive, and every option is alive. That's the only way you're going to win this game. We saw last week that they can't operate efficiently if he's not a threat to run the football.
Seth, you said something about the Eagle offense being complex, and I'm like, the offensive coordinator, though, relies on the decision-making of the quarterback, not his play calling. And so to me, it's more of Hurts. Like you said, he's the system. So I get that Steichen and Nick put this formula together, but they're really almost obsolete in the whole process of moving the chains, because you may call a play, Seth, and it's up to Jalen to make that, whether am I going to throw it? Am I going to run it? Am I going to keep it? Am I going to hand it? All of that is him and his decision-making. So when you say it's complex because the quarterback has the great decision-making. I don't think the sideline guys are spectacular offensive coordinators, because it's the quarterback that's making the spectacular decisions. Am I wrong when I say that?
No, I think it's a combination. I'm not going to go that far, because the RPO piece and the read option isn't the only part of the offense that they have. You have, 11 personnel. You've got 12 personnel situations where you're not really running RPOs or read options, where you've got a call and the quarterback's got to make a check based upon what he sees, pre-snap, or the coordinator gets into a groove where he's giving you a good mixture of just straight handoffs and read options and RPOs. So it's the call, but like every other quarterback in the NFL, the quarterback's got to make, Jalen's got to make the adjustment at the line of scrimmage. He's got to read what's going on. He's got a pre-snap read. He's got to read in the moment. And when they're throwing the ball, he's got to understand, okay, they're in this coverage. If they're in this coverage, the primary goes left to right. Who's my primary receiver against this coverage? And he's got to make the adjustment. If he's in something that he doesn't like, then he's got to check out of it and put the offense, in a better position. He and the coaches have gone over those 10 to 15 play scenarios that says that, when we get this look, we think this gives us an opportunity for a home run. He's got to see it. He's got to remember it. He's got to recognize it, and he's got to make the adjustment, okay? But if they don't go through it during the week as an offensive coordinator and a quarterback, then how is he going to make those decisions? So while the onus of the decisions on game day, is on Jalen, because he's actually on the field, it's the preparation that transpires throughout the week with him and his offensive coordinator and his quarterback coach, and even Nick Sirianni, if he sticks his head in the offensive room, to make sure that they're putting together a plan that will always and in every situation puts Jalen in a position to have success. And then when he doesn't, when everything goes to hell in a handbasket, use your athleticism, use your skills, to get out of the pocket and run if you need to run, or buy time to throw it down the field if you need to do that.
Seth, so it's more like chalkboard stuff where you're going over situational play calling. What do you do on 3rd and 3 here? When you see the safety high or you see the linebacker covering, do you go block and release on your tight? Are you constantly going over situational play calling? So to me, it's not so much being out there on the practice field running this. It's more seeing it like Brady does and how he goes over, because there used to be a war game, and Belichick told Jimmy Johnson this. They play a war game like a battleship, Seth. He'd throw this at him. Hey, this is where we're going to go here with this. What is it, 3rd and 10 here? You're on your -20. Brady would have to come up with a scenario. Do you think it's that kind of coaching that's going on for him? Because he's got a lot on his plate to make that one play in a situation in a series work. That's how they prepare for this. Seth, your mic. Seth, there you go. Go ahead.
I think that situationally, I believe that there are times there are different parts of the field that you've got different offensive plays that are designed for that part of the field. Like when you look at a play sheet for an offensive coordinator, they got like a block over here, a block over here, a small block over here, and they flip it over. They got all these different sections. Those sections, in my opinion, are situational blocks. So the quarterback knows, you know, even on his wrist, the plays that he has on his wrist are in coordination with that sheet that the offensive coordinator has, okay? So when you get in the red zone, you know that there's only a handful of defenses that they're going to run in the red zone. You're not going to run in the red zone what you run out, you know, on the minus 30. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
So when you go through your red zone package, it's like, okay, give me all the red zone plays that the Giants have run in the last 5 weeks. So your film guy is going to pull down all of those plays, and you're going to get an opportunity through the analytics to see, okay, what defenses do they run, you know, in the red zone? And you're probably going to find out they probably got 4, maybe 5 different defenses in the red zone. So now the coaching staff can take each one of those defenses and craft plays that work against that defense, okay? And now that's what Jalen Hurts and the coaches are going over every single week. If you get this look, if you get this read in this situation, check to this. This is what we want to go to. Now the onus is on Jalen to do the work during the week, to commit it to memory or to have it on his arm pad that when he sees that, check, 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 kill, kill, kill. Get us to the best situation to help us be successful. I believe that every coach, every offensive coordinator, every quarterback coach, every offensive-minded head coach has those conversations with his quarterback during the week.
Seth, I swear to God, 2 questions here, and I want to bring you to your playing days here. Is postseason experience an overrated thing? And I'm going to throw this at you about your gangrene team. I thought that side of the football, and I was in the league at the time, I thought you guys, when you were in the postseason, I told Jerome this, I thought you guys played with more pressure on you because you knew the limitations of your offense. And you played, you guys never played, but like the Fog Bowl or whatever, there were all kinds of situations that you guys played. I thought you guys played with more pressure on you than what Randall did and what you guys had on that side of the ball because you knew they were limited. Am I right or wrong on that?
No, listen, no doubt about it. You know, there was not equal footing because the Philadelphia Eagles franchise was not a 2 to 3 year fix. You know, it was a 5 to 7 year fix. That's how bad the organization was. And back then, you didn't have as much money under the salary cap, you know, as you have now. You know, so Buddy had to build one piece and then begin the process of building the other piece. Well, it just so happened that, you know, him and the owner didn't see eye to eye. He wasn't given the time to actually do it. I'll give you a case in point. The day before he got fired, I walked in his office and he was watching film. And he looks at me, he says, you know, I'm looking at these offensive linemen. I got to get Randall some offensive linemen to protect him and to create a running game. He said, I got the defense settled. You guys are headed in the direction I need you. I need to build out the offense now. And he goes, these 2 offensive tackles from Tennessee, he goes, neither one of them are worth a shit. I mean, that's exactly what he said. Anton Davis and the McCray kid.
Yep. Turned out the Bucs took him and he sucked.
Yeah. So he said, but this kid right here, and I'll tell you who he's talking about in a second. I'm gonna give you a chance to guess who he is. He said, this kid right here is going to be a perennial All-Pro. He may even be a Hall of Famer. Who do you think that tackle was?
Jim Lachey.
No, because he tried to trade for Jim Lachey, and the Eagles wouldn't make the trade, and he wound up going to Washington. Washington won the Super Bowl that year.
The kid at UCLA.
Lachey, yeah.
Ogden?
Lachey played with Keith Byers at Ohio State, and Keith Byers went to Buddy, was like, hey, we need to trade for this guy. Harry Gamble and Norman Brayman would not make the trade, so he went to Washington instead. Okay. The guy that I'm talking about is Eric Williams.
Wow. Goes to the
Okay.
Cowboys.
Eric Williams. Now, we picked that year. 2 days later, they fired Bud. Okay. We picked before Dallas in that draft that year in the first round. But the Eagles traded away 2 first-round draft picks to move up and take Anton Davis because they thought that other teams were going to take him.
Wow.
And we could have sat right where we were and kept those draft picks if Buddy would have remained the head coach and taken Eric Williams to set the tone for a new offensive line.
That's dude, that team, you guys, that defense. I'll go to my grave saying this, man. It was the best defense I've ever seen because you guys did it over a longer period of time than the 85 Bears. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't meant to be, Seth. Seth, you know what? I look at things in the mirror. You must look in the mirror all the time and go, shit. It's just, because am I right when you do that? Because I do that. I go, man, lost opportunity there.
Well, listen, everything that's the tough part about winning the championship. Everything has to fall in place the right way. Injuries have to play a part. You got to be peaking at the right time in all phases. You got to have players and horses across the board to get it done. The coaches got to make the right moves and pull the right levers and the right strings. It's tough. So when you see a team like the Cowboys be able to go back to back, back in the day, and the Denver Broncos be able to go back to back in the day, and the San Francisco 49ers be able to go back to back in the day. You see Kansas City get there and back to back, even though they win one and they lose one. It takes talent, good coaching, great GM moves, and some luck in order to get that done. We had the pieces and we were on the right trajectory. Just, luck wasn't on our side. And I'll tell you another story. I was in New York playing golf at O.J. Anderson's golf event. I was the only Eagle among all these giants, okay? So we get done and we're sitting out on the patio, and the fog bowl comes up. And I'm sitting next to LT, and LT looks at me. He was like, the minute that fog rolled in there, he said, we knew we were going to win the Super Bowl. I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, we weren't worried about Chicago or the 49ers. He said, we couldn't do anything with y'all. And when y'all lost in that fog bowl, he said, we knew right then and there that we were Super Bowl champions. And they won that year.
Damn. I promise this is it. I want to ask you one question about Andy Reid. Do you think that Patrick Mahomes buys more in? And Seth, I posted this on my Twitter page because to me, the thing that I see with Mahomes versus what I saw with McNabb in Philadelphia is that Patrick buys into what Andy's saying. Can you imagine losing Tyreek Hill, Seth, and you're walking in and you go, who are you replacing him with? And he goes, Juju Smith-Schuster. I would have shit my brick if I was him and went, man. And what does he do? He breaks the all-time single-season passing number, and Andy looks at him and goes, I told you, I got you. That for a player, to me, that's buy-in. He does have me. I never thought that Donovan McNabb ever bought completely 100% in to what Andy was doing. The prime example is the TL relationship because Tom Brady had a murderer next to him, right next to his locker. He had a maniac in Antonio Brown. It's a quarterback's responsibility to make that work, not be adversarial towards your guys. You've got to make the entire locker room. I think this is Jalen Hurts' massive strength that he embraces the entire locker room, where Wentz maybe did half the locker room. How important is that to have that faith and relationship with the head coach? Because I never thought McNabb had it. I thought he was a whiner. And personally, I thought he complained too much. I thought he was petty.
Well, let me say this about Donovan. From the time that Donovan was picked, there were those in Philadelphia that didn't like the pick. With the 9th pick overall, the Philadelphia Eagles select Donovan McNabb, University of Syracuse, in the first round. Boo! Come on, man. Come on.
Agreed.
He's sitting at home looking at that nonsense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there were people that were upset before he could even get in the city. And then think about the first couple of years, all that he had to go through, the negative publicity and the negative comments about Donovan. And then how he tried to acquiesce to what the media and everybody else wanted him to do by stopping running the football and trying to become the pocket passer. And I think he lost something when he took that out of his game. I thought he bought in. I just didn't think that Andy Reid and Joe Banner did enough.
So they didn't buy in.
Well, listen, no. I think that Andy Reid and Joe Banner failed Donovan McNabb from a talent standpoint at the wide receiver position. Okay? Come on, James Thrash, Tom Peakston, Freddie Mitchell. Come on, man. They tried, but they couldn't get it right. And you saw what Donovan could be once you gave him an elite level wide receiver. He had an elite level running back in Brian Westbrook and Buckhalter. He had an elite level tight ends in Selleck and Lewis, but he had nothing elite on the outside. Okay? Even though Andy made all of these moves as far as Patrick Mahomes is concerned, they still had talent. Okay? The one thing that Andy and Veach have been able to do is they've been able to find talent in the later rounds. Come on, Mecole Hardman is a beast.
Yeah.
He's a beast.
Yeah.
Juju Smith-Schuster, I mean, he looked like he was on his way out of the league. They go and get him and bring him in, and he looks like a world beater. So from the standpoint of it all, I would always defend Donovan the same way that I defend, Randall. If you want to know how great Randall could have been, go look at his 1 year in Minnesota, look at the statistics. And if he could have been surrounded, and I'm not saying that he had great wide receivers. He had Mike Quick. He had Fred Barnett. He had Keith Byers coming out of the backfield. But then he didn't have an offensive line. So he didn't even have time to see what the hell was going on. But when you look at what he did in that 1 year in Minnesota, okay, that gives you an idea of how great he could have been had he had a full slate of great talent around him. Montana was great. Steve Young was great. Why? He had Jerry Rice, John Taylor, Brent Jones, Tom Rathman, Roger Craig, and then Ricky Waters. Come on. And a great offensive line. You want me to go on? You want me to talk about Troy Aikman and why he was great? Yeah. Okay. So when I look at these two guys, they couldn't ascend to their ultimate potential and their ultimate greatness because they didn't have a complete slate. They didn't have what all these other great Hall of Fame quarterbacks had. Now, when you talk about how that pertains to leadership, yeah, as a quarterback, you got to be that guy. Everybody has to love you on both sides of the ball and on special teams. And you got to be the guy that leads. If you're gonna call that position the most important position on the field, then you better go get a guy who everyone's going to hitch their caboose to and follow that guy. Jalen Hurts has the unique ability to lay it on the line and make everybody else believe that if he's going to lay it on the line, that they'll lay it on the line. And they're confident in him. They believe in what he's selling because he's selling the same thing that Nick Sirianni is selling. He's selling it, and everybody else is drinking the Kool-Aid, eating the oranges, and buying in. And that's why they're 14-3 and 2 games away from the Super Bowl. Plain and simple.
Seth, I said this. Yeah, it's funny you said that. I said this yesterday about Randall. I said, you see that kid in Kansas City? That's Patrick Mahomes. I said, if Randall Cunningham played today, he's undefensible. If he had the 2022 Philadelphia Eagle offense, you could not defend Randall Cunningham. This guy was like Gumby running the ball. He's hurdling people. He's throwing it 100 yards down the field. I told, Patrick Mahomes, what you watch with him, that's a modern day Randall Cunningham on what you see. You think that comparison's fair?
It all depends on who his coach was. I think that Randall's potential and talent kind of flatlined for a while because, Doug Scoville, I don't know if you remember or know Doug Scoville. Doug Scoville passed away right had a massive heart attack in the Eagles facility. Doug Scoville was the sounding board, the only guy that Randall really trusted. So when Doug Scoville passed away, I feel like Randall's development became arrested. Now you got, and he struggled. He struggled through Buddy's last couple of years there. He struggled through Kote's time there, got benched. He got, let go once Ray Rose came in. But when he went to Minnesota, he had Brian Billick, a guy, an offensive coordinator turned head coach with a viable staff that could teach him and show him how to be the quarterback that they needed him to be. So a lot of things go into it.
Yeah.
Dan, a lot of things. I mean, the coaching is a big part of it because players can only improve to the level of the intellect level of the coaches that coach them. Okay, if you got a great quarterback coach and a great offensive coordinator and they know how to teach, then the chances that quarterback is going to succeed go up exponentially because they can teach him over time if he's bought into wanting to get better. If those coordinators and those quarterback coaches don't know a damn thing, what can they teach him? So we're watching and watching these young quarterbacks fail because you got people in position who don't know what the hell they're doing, perpetrating a fraud, and then we want to point the finger at the quarterback. Just like Lamar Jackson. I would have brought Lamar in, went and got him a quarterback guru, and taught him how to play the quarterback position from the pocket first, and then use your skills to run. No, what did they do? They draft him 32nd overall, last pick in the first draft. They bring in Greg Roman, and then they devise an offense for his skill set instead of making him learn how to be a quarterback first and a runner second. And then you wonder why he's beat up and hurt. You wonder why Cam Newton, flamed out when he flamed out. You wonder why RG3 is doing TV instead of still playing.
So you think, but isn't Jalen on that same road? I mean,
I don't think so.
Jalen's also that dual threat guy too. I mean, you everything you just said about Lamar. I mean, Seth, they're doing in Philly
right now. Jalen is in the second year of an offense for the first time in the last 6 years of his football playing career. Okay, he's still developing as a passer of the football. I said at the beginning of the season, Jalen Hurts has to throw the ball a minimum of 30 to 35 times a game in order for the Philadelphia Eagles to know whether he's the guy moving forward. I guarantee you he's averaging right around 35 passes a game. But the run piece of it is part of it. Do you think that they want him to have to run the ball? No, they don't.
Seth, he was on pace for 200 carries.
Yeah.
I mean, he was at 156 when, he got hurt. And this guy had 42 less carries than Miles Sanders. I mean, I thought that number was supposed to come down.
Well, but you got to understand, if you're going to run the RPO, there's a difference between called running plays for your quarterback and read option and RPO. I mean, this is why when people get all bent out of shape about how often he's running the ball, if you're going to implement this type of offense, every time that he puts the ball out, the defense is dictating whether he runs the ball or whether he hands it off or whether he passes it. He's just making the correct read. So your intention might be, okay, we want to throw the ball here, but if he gets a read to hand it, he's going to hand it off. If he gets a read to keep it, he's going to keep it, and that's the piece of the RPO that you have to deal with. Now, I'd like to see Jalen continue to evolve, okay, to where you don't have to run the RPO but every maybe twice a quarter. Why? Because as he continues to evolve as a passer and as a complete quarterback, and as a guy who can look and read the field pre-snap, then that's going to allow them to be more of a pass-centric offense. He is still developing. Last year, this time, we were talking about his accuracy. He was below 60% passing the ball, completion, all of these things. He went to the offseason and he improved it, okay? But you can't ask for this guy to be a seasoned vet in the second full year of him being a starting quarterback. He is still growing and developing. Now, I expect for him to take a massive leap next year, okay, where he can be the quarterback that you can call plays from the and have him play from the pocket. You can turn around and hand the ball off without it having to be an RPO or a read option, and he can operate like that. But you still have those weapons in your arsenal that you can call them up and use them at any time. That way, you keep your quarterback at a lot less risk for injury. And lastly, what the Eagles need to do is the Eagles need to go and draft a quarterback who possess the same skill sets that Jalen Hurts does, that they can groom so that when he gets hurt, and I say when he gets hurt because if he keeps running, he's going to get hurt again, that you got a guy that you can plug in like Tyler Huntley down in Baltimore, and you don't have to alter your offense. Okay?
Or Deion's kid.
And listen, what I'm saying is that you cannot ask Gardner Minshew to run Jalen Hurts' offense. Can't ask him to do that. He just would not pull the ball and run it. He's going to hand it off every time. You understand what I'm saying? Yep. Or he's going to pass it. He's not going to hold it. And that's the problem. If he's not going to take off and run it, then he can't be your backup quarterback. You got to go and find that guy in the draft and develop him so that when Jalen gets hurt, the team isn't hurt, too much by him having to sit a week or two.
I'm going to leave you with this. I'm on a 50-man panel that puts names together for the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame people have been on my show, and they exposed that. I'm on a 50-man panel that each year puts the list together for the pre-15, which are the final 15. And I submitted your name this year, along with Eric Allen, and a couple other dudes that probably deserve consideration for the Hall of Fame. And I put your stats together. Jason Coles was on here. So was Rick Gosselin. So was Jared Bell. They all ask me because I picked the 5 guys, and I tell them who I think is the Hall of Fame. I wasn't supposed to say that, but a lot of them exposed. There's 50 of us. So I just want you to know, Seth, that's one of the reasons I wanted you on too, because I submitted your name for next year for candidacy for the Hall of Fame.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate it. I don't talk about myself, in the Hall of Fame deal because, the old rule used to be is the quickest way not to get in is to self-promote. So I don't promote. I don't talk about my numbers. I just don't do it. I see guys on social media that are tooting their own horn and going on. But the guy I will talk about, and who I think is an absolute, travesty is Eric Allen. There is no way in hell, okay? And I want to emphasize, no way in hell that Eric Allen should not be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame when you think about some of the other cornerbacks and defensive backs that have gotten in. Here's a guy with 50-plus interceptions, 10 touchdowns, okay? Perennial All-Pro, okay? Played on one of the best defenses in the history of the game. And year after year after year after year, they overlook this guy. And there are guys that they're putting in whose numbers don't even come close to his. Now, to me, that's a travesty. I'm going to advocate for him because if people would just look at the numbers, even if you want to look at the playoffs, okay? I mean, even if you want to look at the Pro Bowls, okay? Take the last 4 defensive backs that have gone into the Pro Football Hall of Fame and put his numbers up against theirs.
I don't see how Leroy Butler, I put it totally against Leroy Butler. No disrespect to him, Seth.
I'm not saying any names. There's a lot of those guys that I played with and played against during my time, but I'm sorry. There's no way in hell that Eric Allen should be enduring what they're putting him through. He should have been in the Hall of Fame by now.
Hey, Seth, I put on Leslie O'Neal, Cornelius Bennett, you, and Eric Allen were the guys that I've gotten to so far because I don't know how Leslie O'Neal constantly has been passed over. He's one of the best pass rushers to ever do it. And Cornelius Bennett, they penalized him because he lost 5 Super Bowls, but he was a linchpin on that Bills defense along with Bruce and Darryl Talley. And, you know, I talk to Talley all the time, and he goes,
Yeah.
who's the other linebacker you put? And I go, I'm putting Seth Joyner. And Darryl Talley told me this. He goes, Seth Joyner's not in the Hall of Fame? And I go, no, he's not.
Let me ask you a question. If you're going to penalize Darryl Talley for losing 4 Super Bowls, but you have Bruce Smith in, Andre Reed in, Thurman Thomas in,
Jim Kelly
in,
Marv Levy,
and
Andre Reed.
And I'm trying to think there's one other that I'm missing. But you got all of those guys in, and you're going to tell me what? Because if he wasn't one of the top defensive players on that defense that got them to 4 Super Bowls, how do you leave that guy off? I think he's got something like 70 sacks as an outside linebacker. Come on, man.
Absolutely. Hey, Seth, I can't wait to watch you on the post-game show on Sunday. Thank you so much for taking the time that you always do with me, man. And again, man, I'm an advocate of yours, and we're going to try to see how far we can take this thing next year. So I'll keep you updated. I'll send you some text messages from Jarrett Bell and these guys. They're going to be pushing for you for this year. And I know you don't talk about it, and I know that's not high on your agenda, but hey, Seth, I love you, man. I'll talk to you down the line. Watch you Sunday. Thank you, my friend.
You got it, Dan. Take care, man.
You bet, man. That is the great Seth Joyner, and I did. You know, you guys see it all the time when the Hall of Famers come on. I go, how's Seth Joyner not on this list? And he goes, are you advocating for him? And I told Jared Bell, yeah, I'm going to put him on my list this coming offseason here to have him being considered, and I think Eric Allen too. And they go, asked me, do you not like Leroy Butler? I go, I think it was a travesty that Leroy Butler got into the Hall of Fame over. And by the way, no disrespect, Sam Mills is not a better linebacker than Seth Joyner. I have nothing but great respect for Sam. Sam is a guy who was an overachiever. He did USFL, all that stuff. I love Sam. Hey, keep pounding is a theme down in Carolina because of Sam Mills, but he's not a better linebacker than Seth Joyner. And some of these guys fall through the cracks. Dennis Hara, 9-time Pro Bowler with the Rams, not in. Okay, guys, let me take a timeout. Please hit the like button. Keep it here.